partner. They're going to come back to us after they identify what those changes in scope will be, which I will report to the commission as soon as I know what their plan is. But at this point, as the commission knows, we have significant dollars that have been invested in this and the commitment of land. I'm not quite sure how that would be wound. Before we even went down that path, I think the state should have the opportunity to look if they can bring this project back in at the budgeted levels.
Am I correct, the state can't even comment on what we're discussing today because of that cone of silence?
Correct.
So we would be talking about this in a vacuum?
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a few questions, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Everybody's got
Oh, okay.
questions.
Oh,
Yeah, I just
All right, you want to?
don't think we have any. I don't think we have our partners here because of this cone of silence.
Well, I just have some general questions. I think everyone was pretty much surprised at the fact that this came in at the price that it seems to have come in. So I'm a little concerned about your saying, it's not you saying, but you're repeating statements made to you that there can be new specs that can drive the price of this project down. So I'm concerned why those weren't incorporated originally into the design build RFP, that now all of a sudden, we discovered them, and now that's going to bring the price down. So I'm very suspicious that process can be successful and still be able to fulfill the expectation of the quality of service that this light rail system was supposed to provide to begin with. Secondly, if you're saying that we should sit in a wait-and-see pattern, my concern is that we keep assessing property owners within the RAC to collect money that, if it turns out that we're not going to be following through on this project, why do we keep collecting money from people? Why do we keep assessing them? Should we suspend that as well?
Okay.
Okay. And furthermore, what talks have you been having with the county, since it's, from my understanding, only the county and the state can rescind the deal if it's determined that it's infeasible or impractical to move forward? How many conversations have you had so far since this revelation occurred to determine whether or not should this thing go sideways, what steps that we will take jointly to try to extricate the city from its obligation and move forward on this? You could take those questions in any order that you want.
So let me deal with the assessment one, because that's probably the easiest one.
Okay.
So the assessments are put on property tax bills. The property tax bills are out. There's no continual assessment. Borrow probably a bad pun, but that train left the station for this year when the property tax bills went out. So people pay their property taxes, the assessment is collected, and it's remitted to the city to sit in the fund.
What happens to that money then if it's determined that the project is not going forward?
So we actually have an obligation to turn that money over to the DDA within a certain number of days of receipt. The DDA holds it. It's there to provide debt service on the state infrastructure bank loan, and I believe that money right now is just sitting in a trust fund. I don't know.
You say the state infrastructure trust fund. This is money to be used for the project.
Right. So state infrastructure bond. So the commitment for one of the commitments that we had was to put in $20 million plus or minus that was raised through an assessment. The original intent of that was to put the assessment in place and to float a bond with the assessment. In lieu of floating a bond, we were able to go to the state infrastructure bank and take out a loan, or the DDA took out a loan, which is backed by the assessment that is collected. So we collect the assessment, county collects the assessment to the property tax collector, gives us the money, we give it over to the DDA. The DDA is then responsible for paying the debt service on the loan from the state, but I don't believe any debt service has been paid yet because the loan has not been.
It hasn't been funded.
Well, the loan has been funded, they have not needed to call.
They've not drawn on it.
Or drawn on
Right.
the loan. So the money is sitting there in the trust fund for that purpose.
Okay, so if the state decides to opt out of the project, then that money would be available to us for reimbursement to the homeowners.
It would be my opinion, non-legal opinion, that would go back to the properties that generated it.
Okay.
The property.
Right. Okay, that's question one.
So that dealt with the assessment.
Okay.
Regarding the conversations, I've only had a brief conversation with the county and one conversation with the state with regard to this, because my interest was to find out what their proposed next steps.
Right.
The county basically said that they're going to have a conversation with the state, and I had a conversation with the state that just basically what I've told you is what they told me.
Right, and I had about 5 or 6 conversations with the county, different county commissioners and county administration.
And
Similar.
What are they saying?
I think everybody's waiting to see what happens with this process, how it plays out. I don't think anybody is, here's the problem. I think we all have concerns over this price tag. I've not heard anybody, either in a public setting or in a private setting, express that they were pleased with the price. So I think we all know there's a problem with the most recent price tag. So that creates heartburn. Second issue that I've heard, I haven't heard as much from some of you guys, but for me, the overhead wire issue still hasn't gone away. It is an issue that is going to needs to get resolved. If it doesn't get resolved, we're going to be having this conversation with the state. But because of the requirement that we use American-made product, because of the fact that 80% of the expenditures has to be used on American-made product and American manufactured products, we don't have the best, in my opinion, we don't have the best technology, equipment, product available to us.
Yeah, everyone knows that, so
Right.
that's the other.
But the issue is, because we have partners at the state, we have partners in the county, and we've got a lot of federal funding, I think for us to do anything drastic here in terms of saying, oh, we are going forward, we're not going forward, would be premature until we talk to all our partners.
Well, that's why I wanted to know what conversations had been initiated with regard to our partners. Since only the state and the county can rescind, we can't unilaterally. I just wanted to know, are we working in tandem with these other partners so that we know that we're kept apprised of what they're doing? Because all I get from this county is what I read in the newspaper. And Mayor Sharif indicated, her displeasure in thinking that, the county was going to have to, spend a lot more money on the capital investment, and the whole thing is becoming, everyone's taking a second look at this, and now we're talking. I got several emails regarding the soil, that the weight of this a Wave Streetcar cannot be sustained by the type of underground soil that we have along the route. So things like that we haven't even fully discussed are now coming out. And
that's an old one, by the way.
yeah, I know, but I mean, I got it again today. I know it
Right,
is.
but it's been around for a while.
I know, but it hasn't been resolved. It hasn't been addressed.
Well,
trees up there.
I think it has. I think when that gentleman, the doctor, wrote his comments the first time, they were sent to, it was either SFRTA at that time or the state. They looked at it and they did not agree that there was a problem.
Okay,
So,
all right.
but-
So,
but-
but in terms of the things, whether it be the wires or the rails or the soil, those things really. But even if we had a concern over that as a city, that the county has not had a problem with that. The county is not saying, oh, it has to be all done by battery. They just feel it's a price issue. It's not. Whereas we as a city have continued to raise this issue again and again, and no one seems to be as concerned about it as much as we are. So, so if the mayor says, well, we do not want to go forward based on old technology, do we have that option?
I think you always have the option of whether you're going to further appropriate money or not back, because we don't like overhead wires. I think we're committed at that point. But if they come and say we need more, I think you always have the power of the purse.
Can we be sued? Well, maybe that's not a question for you. Maybe that's something for Cynthia. I mean, can we be sued under any kind of contractual obligation into which we've entered to sort of like a specific performance concept where they would force us to participate?
Well, if we're not honoring our contractual obligations, obviously we could be.
But is that a monetary obligation? Any further monetary obligation?
There is language I recall about cost overruns. I recall.
Well, cost overruns are one thing, but in terms of our just feeling that this isn't right for our community, I mean, are we in a position to be able to divest ourselves of this project and say we don't feel it makes sense for the transportation needs of our community for whatever reason now, whether it be technology, whether it be the route, whatever, money, do we have that right?
I think we've entered into an agreement, and so we'd be expected to live up to the agreement.
So there's no out to that agreement?
Well, I think that, there's always discussions to be had and proposals to be made and try to reach a resolution.
Well,
but we've entered into an agreement to provide a certain amount of funding at this point.
And would our obligation end at this point, or would it continue after this point?
Consistent with the terms, as I recall, there's specific numbers mentioning, and I may be wrong, but I thought there may have been a percentage of possible increases that we have agreed to be responsible for paying.
Okay.
So I just wanted to answer your first question.
Yes.
Because you asked three. The other one is, dealt really with the design and triggers, and probably the best way I can characterize it is the project may have been over-designed. It may have been the Rolls Royce of streetcars versus just seeking the Cadillac of streetcars, or even just...
Yeah, but I mean, they did a pricing out of this. I mean, the county and the state, they have their very smart people, and they said it shouldn't cost more than this,
right,
based on their design, whether it was Cadillac, Rolls, or Pinto. I mean, the point is, though, now they're saying, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't have had such a fancy design. I don't think we were looking, whether we were looking at fancy design or not, we're still looking at a specific price point to accomplish the goal. And now they're saying, now others, 4. I mean, 70 was the smallest number. It was, there was quite a bit more with the other contractors. I mean, how do we accept the fact that they're going to now value engineer this project and still feel that we're getting the same level of service and product that we had anticipated the first go around?
I think they will be in a position to comment more specifically on that after the cone of silence is lifted.
Okay.
So we won't know the answers to that. I agree with what you're saying. From my perspective, in addition to what Dean has said and Jack has said, because I had my clothes already, I actually asked Cynthia and Lee to start looking go down 2 tracks, no pun intended again, but also the one besides what we're discussing today.
It is expensive with 2 tracks.
Yeah, how do we untie that Gordian knot and really divest ourselves of this type of project? I think that needs to be looked at.
You know how Alexander the Great did it?
Yeah, I know.
He took his sword and
I
just
know.
cut it.
That's what I said, right? But I've asked them to look at that, and the reason that hasn't been mentioned from my perspective right now that bothers me was not only the price being outlandish, which creates those doubts about what are we getting into in the future and committing to in the future without a reality check. But then I look at the county plan that we talked about earlier today, and our need for staff to get into the weeds in that as it goes forward vis-a-vis other aspects of the county plan. But As I understand it, the county plan no longer takes these light rail down to the airport. And it no longer takes it to certain other areas, which had already been somewhat vetted by the feds in going forward with this. So now we're looking at going out Broward Boulevard to 441 and up and down to 441. Those are totally new things, and it's not what we bought into in the very beginning. And I don't know, as us, as a municipality and city, if we're getting what we, to me, that's not the bargain we signed up for. So to me, in addition to what you guys are saying, that's another layer that I think that had to be brought up as we
It's a good
go forward to this.
Yeah.
I mean, so are we going down? Are we still committed? I forget now, so I have to look at the plan. Are we still going to be committed to the causeway? I think we are in the convention center, but not the airport. And you know, you got to start somewhere. That's why I was for this. And we're really going more towards a light rail system for the county for the future. But we're not incorporating the areas we bought into in the very beginning. So that bothers me a lot. So then again, I have the uncertainty on the funding aspect, I have the uncertainty onto the product that we're actually going to get as far as the routes go. I just want to mention that because we're not going to make a decision today.
Or more pointedly, the end game, because
Yeah.
I mean, from day one, I think we all argued the obvious, that, you know, the 2.8 miles is not the end all the be all.
Exactly.
Going to the airport and going to Seaport, connected to downtown, is what makes sense.
And part of a multimodal system countywide and bringing all the other transportation means and ways into that system. But we're already lopping off things we thought we were going to have in the
That's
beginning.
the value engineering.
No, I think the value
Just
engineering
kidding.
system, well, I think, what we know, I mean, honestly, the county extended this whole thing, I think, by 2 years by adding things on different layers that personally, I don't think
they
had to
wanted
be.
to operate it personally, but
Anyway.
I could.
Oh, well, guys, we're going to speculate all for now. So,
I just
how
wanna-
many people signed up? Does anybody need to speak based on the fact we're not taking any action?